All right, hey everyone, welcome back. You know how you all love those stories of daring heists? Well, get this. This time we're diving deep into one that's, well, it's a little different. It's the Bangladesh bank heist, and let me tell you, this one's got it all.
It really does. It's got international intrigue, cyber warfare, a touch of, well, maybe a lot of human error, and a whole lot of money. We're talking almost $1 billion.
Almost $1 billion. That's insane. And you're right, this isn't your typical bank robbery. This was a full-on cyber heist, and it almost worked. But let's rewind a bit, set the scene.
Absolutely. So picture this. It's February 2016. We're in Dhaka, Bangladesh. The Bangladesh bank, the central bank of the country, it's closed for the weekend. Everyone's enjoying their time off, right?
Right, nothing out of the ordinary.
Well, not quite. One employee, Zubair bin Huda, he decides to swing by the office for a bit. Maybe he forgot something, who knows. But while he's there, he notices something strange.
What was that?
The printer isn't working. Now, this isn't some high-tech supercomputer. This is just a regular old printer. So he figures it's a glitch, no big deal, leaves it for the IT guys to fix on Monday. Little did he know.
Oh man, I bet there's a whole lot more to it than a simple printer jam.
You bet there was. He comes back on Monday, flips the printer on, and bam! What does he find? Messages requesting the transfer of nearly $1 billion. Can you imagine?
Oh my gosh, I'd probably faint.
Hmm?
Talk about starting your week off with a bang. So this is it, huh? The Bangladesh bank heist.
This is it. One of the biggest cyber heists in history. And it all started, get this, a year earlier.
Wait, a whole year before? So they were planning this thing way in advance.
Yeah, these guys were playing the long game. A year before the actual heist went down, they started sending these really sneaky emails to 36 bank officials. I'm talking emails designed to look completely harmless.
Like spam or something.
Not even spam, they were more targeted than that. These emails contain a Trojan, a type of malware that basically hides inside a seemingly innocent file, like a document or an image.
Ah, so it's like a digital Trojan horse sneaking in under the radar. Clever, but also super scary.
Exactly. And unfortunately, 3 officials ended up clicking on these Trojan-laden emails. Just like that, the hackers had a back door into the bank's computer systems.
Oh no, 3 people.
Yeah.
And that was all it took. That's wild.
It is, and it really highlights how even the most secure systems can be vulnerable to human error. And it gets even crazier. You want to know how they really got in deep?
Lay it on me.
They exploited a vulnerability in, get this, a cheap network switch, like a $10 piece of equipment.
Seriously, a $10 thing almost brought the whole system down. It makes you realize how important every single detail is, right?
Absolutely. It's all about the weakest link. Now, you might be wondering, why Bangladesh? Why target this specific bank?
Yeah, good point. There are plenty of other banks out there, probably with way more money.
True, but the hackers, they did their homework. They knew that Bangladesh Bank, while holding significant reserves, didn't have the same level of security as, say, the Federal Reserve in New York.
Ah, so they were looking for a high reward, low risk kind of situation.
Precisely. They wanted a target that was, well, a bit easier to crack. Now, here's where things get even more interesting.
All right, I'm hooked.
So they've got access to the bank systems, but they're not going to walk out with duffel bags full of cash. They need a way to move that money electronically to make it vanish. And that leads us to
To
the Philippines.
the Philippines. Okay, now we're really going international.
Before the heist even started, they had set up 4 accounts in a bank in Manila.
And I'm guessing they didn't just walk in and open these accounts like regular folks.
Not exactly. Let's just say they had some help from individuals within the bank who, shall we say, weren't exactly following the rule book.
Ah, so a little bit of corruption sprinkled in.
You could say that. Now, how did they actually move the money? They used the SWIFT network.
Swift? What's that?
It's this global messaging system that banks use to communicate and authorize international transfers. Think of it like the internet for banks. Ah, okay. So the hackers basically hijacked the bank's communication system. That's insane.
It was a bold move. They used their access to send fraudulent transfer requests, trying to move nearly $1 billion to those accounts in the Philippines.
But they didn't get away with all of it, right?
Thankfully, no. One of the transfer requests actually had a typo in it.
A typo? You're kidding. That's what saved the day.
It was a lucky break. That little mistake raised red flags and ultimately prevented a huge chunk of the money from being transferred. But they still managed to get away with $81 million.
$81 million. That's still a massive amount of money. I can't even imagine what the scene was like at the Bangladesh bank when they realized what had happened.
It was pure chaos. At first, they had absolutely no idea what had hit them. I mean, they were so bewildered they spent hours looking at security footage, even mistaking a cleaner for a potential suspect.
No way. They thought the cleaner was behind a multi-million-dollar cyber heist. It sounds crazy, right? But it just shows how unprecedented and shocking this whole thing was. They were totally blindsided.
So who are these hackers?
Yeah.
Did they ever find out who was behind all of this?
While no official charges were ever filed, the investigation ultimately led to a group called the Lazarus Group.
Lazarus Group, never heard of them. Who are they?
Well, they're not your average cyber criminals. They're a state-sponsored hacking group believed to be operating out of, is you ready for this?
Hit me.
North Korea.
North Korea. Wow, this just got a whole lot more serious. So what about the 81 million? Did they ever recover any of that?
Thankfully, some of it was recovered, partly because of that typo we talked about, which alerted authorities. But unfortunately, a significant portion of the stolen funds is still unaccounted for.
This whole case is mind-blowing. I can't believe something like this could actually happen.
It's a real reminder that in today's world, everything is connected. A cyber heist in Bangladesh can have repercussions around the globe. And it also exposed the very real threat of state-sponsored cybercrime, something that people weren't really fully grasping before this event.
So this wasn't just about stealing money. It was about something much bigger, something more. Geopolitical.
You got it.
Yeah.
It showed how vulnerable the global financial system really is and how any country, any bank could be a target.
This is all so fascinating, but what about the people on the other end of this money? You mentioned the Philippines, right? What happened there? Did anyone face consequences for their part in this whole thing?
Well, that's where things take a rather unfortunate turn.
Welcome back, everyone. We're picking up our conversation about the Bangladesh bank heist, and man, there's still so much to unpack. Last we left off, things are getting pretty intense with the revelation that a group linked to North Korea might be behind all of this. But we also touched upon the situation in the Philippines, where the stolen money was funneled. What happened there? Did anyone face any consequences?
Well, in the Philippines, the situation was complicated. One person who really bore the brunt of the blame was Maya Santos de Guido. She was a bank manager at the branch where those accounts were set up.
Right, the accounts where the stolen money ended up. So what happened to her?
Well, she always maintained that she had no idea about the fraudulent nature of those transactions. She claimed she was basically duped, but she still ended up taking the fall.
Are you kidding?
It's pretty tragic, actually. She ended up receiving a 56-year prison sentence.
56 years. That's longer than some people's entire careers.
I know, right? It's a very harsh sentence. And on top of that, she was also slapped with a hefty fine.
How much are we talking here?
$109 million.
Wait a minute, 109 million. That's even more than the amount that was actually stolen.
It is, and it really raises some serious questions about, fairness and justice in the aftermath of this whole ordeal. It makes you wonder if maybe she was made a scapegoat.
Yeah, it's definitely a troubling situation. So, while we're on the topic of accountability, what about the folks back at the Bangladesh bank? Did anyone there face any repercussions for allowing this massive security breach to happen?
Well, that's where things get even more frustrating.
How so?
Despite the sheer scale of this heist, no one at the Bangladesh bank was ever officially held accountable.
Seriously, no one?
Nope. There were a lot of calls for resignations, investigations, you name it. But ultimately, no one faced any real significant consequences, legal or professional.
Wow, that's pretty hard to believe. You'd think after a security breach of this magnitude, there would be, heads rolling, some kind of major shakeup.
Right, you'd think so, but it didn't happen. And to this day, it remains a very controversial point. Some people argue that this lack of accountability reflects a deeper issue.
What do you mean?
Well, they argue it shows a reluctance on the part of the bank, maybe even the government, to fully acknowledge the extent of their failures. A lack of transparency, if you will.
It almost feels like they were trying to sweep it under the rug.
It's certainly a perception that some people have. So you see, this whole heist didn't just expose vulnerabilities in technology, it also revealed some pretty serious systemic issues within, the global financial system itself.
Right. If a central bank can be robbed like this, it makes you wonder just how secure any of these systems really are.
Exactly. The Bangladesh bank heist was a wake-up call, not just for Bangladesh, but for the entire financial world. It forced banks and governments everywhere to finally confront this very real threat of cybercrime.
So did anything actually change after this? Did banks actually step up their security, or was it all just talk?
Oh, no, there are definitely some real changes. This heist forced everyone's hand. It wasn't just talk, there was action, too. One of the most immediate responses came from SWIFT, remember, the organization that handles those international bank transfers.
Yeah, the ones the hackers used to steal the money.
Right. Well, after the heist, SWIFT knew they had to up their game. They implemented a whole new customer security program.
What kind of program?
Well, they made a bunch of security controls mandatory for all their member banks. They also beefed up their own fraud detection and prevention systems to try to catch these kinds of suspicious transactions faster.
So it was like plugging the holes in the dam after the flood already happened?
Yeah, kind of. But it was more than just plugging holes, it was also a complete shift in mindset. This heist really forced financial institutions to start thinking about cybersecurity proactively, not just reactively.
Right, because the hackers, they're not just going to sit around and wait, are they?
Exactly. They're constantly evolving, looking for new ways to exploit weaknesses. It's a constant arms race, trying to stay one step ahead.
So what did this shift in mindset actually look like? What concrete steps did banks take to improve their security?
Well, for one, they started investing heavily in new technologies like advanced intrusion detection systems, threat intelligence platforms, all sorts of fancy stuff.
Sounds high tech.
It is. These new tools help security teams monitor network activity in real time so they have a better chance of catching something fishy before it's too late.
So basically, they gave their security systems a major upgrade.
You could say that, but it wasn't just about the tech. Remember, human error played a big part in the Bangladesh bank heist.
Right. Those few clicks that opened the door for the hackers.
Exactly. So another big change was the emphasis on cybersecurity awareness training for employees.
So like teaching them how to spot those phishing emails and all that.
Exactly. Because even with the best technology in the world, one wrong click can bring the whole system down.
It's kind of scary how something as simple as opening the wrong email can have such huge consequences.
It is. And it's not just the employees. Governments around the world also realized they needed to step up their game.
So we're talking about new laws, maybe even new agencies to deal with cybercrime.
All of that, yeah. We saw a wave of new cybersecurity legislation being passed, stricter penalties for cybercriminals, and a lot more investment in national cybersecurity strategies.
It sounds like a global wake-up call.
It was. Because cybercrime doesn't respect borders, right? So international cooperation became really important too. Organizations like Interpol started playing a bigger role in these kinds of investigations.
Makes sense. You need a global response to a global problem.
Exactly. The Bangladesh bank heist really drove home the point that we're all in this together. An attack in one country can have ripple effects everywhere.
So it wasn't just about catching the bad guys in this particular case. It was about using it as a learning experience to try to prevent future attacks.
Exactly. It was about making the entire system more secure. But it also raised a big question.
What's that?
Did it actually work? Did all of these changes, all this effort actually make a difference? Are we any safer today than we were back in 2016?
All right, welcome back to the deep dive, everyone. We've been digging deep into the Bangladesh bank heist, and let me tell you, it's been a wild ride. But now for the million-dollar question, or should I say the $81 million question, are we any safer today from these kinds of attacks?
Well, the world's definitely changed since 2016, that's for sure. There's a lot more awareness now about just how serious cyber threats can be. Banks, governments, everyone's kind of had to step up their game.
Right, like that whole cybersecurity thing isn't just a buzzword anymore, it's the real deal.
Exactly. And technology has come a long way too. I mean, we've got all these fancy new tools now, artificial intelligence, machine learning, stuff that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction.
So the good guys have some pretty powerful weapons in their arsenal these days, huh? But what about the human factor? We've talked about how those accidental clicks played a role in the Bangladesh bank heist. Have we managed to fix that?
That's the tricky part. Cybersecurity training has become a lot more common, but let's face it, humans are still going to be humans. We're always going to be susceptible to those clever phishing scams, those social engineering tricks.
Right, sometimes that email just looks so real, or you click on a link without thinking twice.
Exactly. We're still the weakest link, unfortunately. And sometimes we just make dumb mistakes, you know?
So it's like we're building Fort Knox, but then we leave the back gate open.
Pretty much. It all comes back to that idea of vigilance, of constantly learning and adapting. Cybersecurity isn't a one-time fix, it's a never-ending process.
Speaking of adapting, what about the attackers themselves? Have they upped their game too since 2016?
Oh, absolutely. They're not just sitting around twiddling their thumbs. They're constantly developing new tools, new techniques, new ways to exploit any weakness they can find.
So it's this constant back and forth, good guys versus bad guys, right?
Yeah.
A never-ending cat and mouse game in the digital world.
Exactly. And that's why we can't ever afford to get complacent. We got to constantly be assessing our vulnerabilities,
Yeah.
updating our systems, and basically trying to predict what the attackers might do next.
So, okay, we've got technology improving, awareness increasing, but the attackers are getting more sophisticated too. So, all things considered, are we more vulnerable now or less vulnerable?
Here's the thing. While we've definitely made a lot of progress, the attack surface has also expanded like crazy. I mean, we're more reliant on technology than ever before. We've got more devices connected to the internet, more data being stored online, more critical infrastructure being controlled by digital systems.
So, more potential targets for the hackers.
Exactly. And with all these new advancements coming up, like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, the possibilities for even more sophisticated attacks are.
Well, they're kind of mind-boggling.
It's like technology is both the solution and the problem, right? We need it to protect ourselves, but it also creates new vulnerabilities.
You hit the nail on the head, and that's why a multi-layered approach to cybersecurity is so important. It's not just about having the latest tech, it's about having a culture of security, making sure everyone's educated about the risks, and encouraging collaboration between governments, industries, everyone.
So it's a team effort, really. We all have a role to play in keeping things safe in the digital world. Absolutely. We can't just be reactive anymore. We got to be proactive, adaptable, resilient. It's like building a digital immune system, one that can detect and respond to threats before they even become a problem.
Wow, this has been such an eye-opening deep dive. You've really helped us understand the complexities of cybercrime and what's being done to combat it. Any final thoughts for our listeners before we wrap things up?
I'd just reiterate that cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. It doesn't matter if you're a CEO or just someone scrolling through TikTok, you have a part to play. Stay informed, be vigilant, and never underestimate the importance of good security practices.
Great advice. The Bangladesh bank heist is a perfect example of how cybercrime isn't just some distant threat. It's a very real danger, and it can happen to anyone.
It really highlights how interconnected our digital world is and how important it is to work together to keep it safe.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. To our listeners, thanks for joining us on this journey. We hope you found it informative, maybe even a little bit thrilling. Stay curious, stay safe, and until next time, keep exploring the depths of knowledge with the deep dive.